My name is Will Hayes, and I learned the hard way that blood is not thicker than money. I was a construction worker. That is what I did. I built things with my hands. Framing, roofing, drywall, concrete, siding, trim. If it involved a hammer or a nail gun or a circular saw, I could do it. I worked for a company called Ellis Brothers Construction in a small town in Texas called Ellisville, about an hour east of Dallas. I was on a crew that built houses and strip malls and the occasional church. It was honest work and it paid the bills. I was not rich. I drove a 12-year-old Ford F-150 with a dent in the passenger door and a transmission that whined in second gear. I lived in a 2-bedroom house on Peach Street with a mortgage I could barely afford and a yard that was more weeds than grass. But I showed up every morning at 6. I worked until the sun went down, and I never complained. That was how my father raised me. My father was Bill Hayes, and he had worked at a lumber mill for 35 years. He left the house at 5 in the morning and came home at 6 in the evening, and in between he lifted boards that weighed as much as he did. He came home with splinters in his hands and sawdust in his hair and a smile on his face. He never missed a day of work in 35 years. Not one. He went to work with the flu. He went to work with a pulled muscle. He went to work the morning after his own father died, because the mill did not stop running just because the Hayes family was grieving. He was not a man of many words, but the words he spoke mattered. He taught me how to change a tire when I was 12. He taught me how to swing a hammer without hurting myself when I was 14. He taught me that your word is the only thing you really own, and if you break it, you are broke. I remember one time, when I was 16, I borrowed his tools to work on a friend's car. I left a wrench out in the rain, and it rusted. He did not yell at me. He did not raise his voice. He just handed me a wire brush and told me to fix it. Everything you own needs to be taken care of, he said, including your reputation. I never forgot that. My father's job at the mill was running the planer. That was the machine that took rough lumber and made it smooth. Boards came in looking like they had been chewed by a dog, and they came out flat and straight and ready to build with. It was not an easy job. The planer was loud. It was dangerous. It had blades that spun at thousands of revolutions per minute, and if you made a mistake, it would take off your hand before you even felt it. My father never made a mistake. I visited the mill once when I was a kid. The school had a field trip. We walked through the whole place, from the debarca to the kiln to the planer. My father was standing at his machine. He did not see me at first. He was focused on the board going through. His hands were steady. His eyes were tracking every inch of wood. One of the guys on my tour pointed at him and said, "That is Bill Hayes. He has been running that machine since before any of you were born." I felt proud. I did not say anything, but I felt it. After the tour, my father found me. He put his hand on my shoulder and walked me back to the bus. "What did you think?" he asked. "It is loud," I said. He laughed. "You get used to it." I thought about that the rest of the day. I thought about how my father spent every day in that noise. How he came home with sawdust in his hair and splinters in his hands and a smile on his face. He never complained. Not once. The men at the mill respected my father. I knew that because I saw it. Sometimes on a Saturday, one of them would stop by the house. Old man Garrett, who had worked the planer with my father for 20 years. A guy named Pete who ran the forklift. They would sit on the porch and drink iced tea and talk about the mill. They talked about the machines, mostly. How the planer was acting up again. How the kiln was running hot. How the new safety rules were slowing everything down. My father listened more than he talked. But when he did talk, they listened back. I remember one time old man Garrett said, "Bill, you are the only man I know who can run that planer blindfolded." My father shrugged. "I have been doing it a long time. 35 years. That is longer than most marriages." My father laughed. It was a quiet laugh, the kind that barely made a sound. But I remembered it. I remember thinking that my father had something I wanted. Not money, not fame, but respect. The kind of respect that comes from doing the same job the same way every day for 35 years. I wanted that. After he retired, some of those men came to visit him at the house. Garrett came by once a month. They would sit in the living room, my father in his recliner, Garrett on the couch, and they would talk about the old days. I was there for one of those visits. I had stopped by to drop off a check for the electric bill. Garrett was there. "Mill is not the same without you," Garrett said. "It is a machine," my father said. "It does not care who runs it." "Maybe, but the men do." My father did not answer. He just nodded. That was the last time I saw Garrett. He died about a year later. Stroke. My father did not go to the funeral. He could not stand that long. I went. I stood in the back and listened to the men from the mill talk about Garrett. They talked about his laugh, his temper, the way he could fix any machine with a wrench and a piece of wire. And they talked about my father. They said Bill Hayes was the best man they ever worked with. I did not tell my father that. He would not have wanted to hear it. My mother was Helen. She was a housewife like most women of her generation. She married my father at 19 and spent the next 35 years keeping a home. She cooked, she cleaned, she raised me and my brother. She did not have a resume. She did not have job skills. She had a high school diploma and a lot of opinions about how the world should work. She loved me. I know she did. But she loved my brother Derek more. Derek was 2 years younger than me, and he was the golden child from the moment he was born. My mother looked at him differently than she looked at me. When he walked into a room, her face lit up. She smiled like she had not smiled in hours. When I walked in, she smiled too, but it was a different kind of smile. Grateful, not proud. I noticed it when I was a kid. Derek could do no wrong. He got grounded once for breaking a window, and my mother let him out early because she missed him. I got grounded once for the same thing, and I served every single day. When Derek brought home a C on his report card, my mother said he was just not a good test taker. When I brought home a B+, she asked why it was not an A. I remember my 10th birthday. My mother made a cake from scratch, chocolate with vanilla frosting. She let me lick the spoon. But when Derek came into the kitchen and wanted a piece before dinner, she cut him one anyway. When I asked for a second piece after dinner, she told me I had already had enough. I remember one Christmas when I was 14. I saved up money from mowing lawns and bought my mother a necklace. It was cheap, probably $10 from the drugstore, but I had picked it out myself. She opened it and said thank you and put it in her jewelry box. I never saw her wear it. But Derek gave her a card he had made at school, construction paper and glue and crayons, and she kept it on the refrigerator for 2 years. There was one summer when I was 16 and Derek was 14. I worked a landscaping job, mowing lawns and trimming hedges in the July heat. I came home every day with sunburned arms and grass in my hair. I gave half my paycheck to my mother to help with groceries. She took it without comment and put it in her purse. Derek spent that summer at the pool with his friends. He did not give her a dime. She never asked him to. I remember one night when I was 17. I came home from work, covered in grass clippings and sweat. My mother was in the kitchen. Derek was in the living room watching television. "I'm home," I said. "There's leftovers in the fridge," my mother said. That was it. No, how was your day? No, sit down and eat something warm. 10 minutes later, Derek walked into the kitchen. He had not done anything all day. My mother looked at him. "Did you have a good day, sweetheart?" "Yeah," he said. "I'm tired. Sit down. I'll make you a plate." I sat at the table and watched her warm up his food. She put it in front of him with a glass of milk. She asked him if he wanted anything else. I looked down at my own plate. The leftovers. Cold. I did not say anything. I just ate my food and went to my room. I thought about that night a lot over the years. I thought about it while I was learning to frame houses. I thought about it while I was eating sandwiches alone in my truck because I could not afford to eat anywhere else. I thought about it when I watched Derek breeze through life without ever having to earn a thing. I moved out when I was 19. I got a job at a construction site and I never looked back. I worked my way up from laborer to framer to crew lead. I learned the trade the hard way, through blisters and backaches and mistakes that cost me money. By the time I was 30, I was one of the best framers in Ellis County. Old man Ellis, who owned the company, told me I had a gift. You can look at a pile of lumber and see a house, he said. Not everybody can do that. I was proud of that. My first year on the job, I showed up late one day because my truck would not start. The foreman, a man named Carl, pulled me aside. Late is the same as not showing up, he said. Does not matter why. My truck broke down. Then you fix it the night before. You plan for the things that can go wrong, because something always goes wrong. He was teaching me the same lesson my father had taught me. Take care of what you own. Show up when you say you will. Do not make excuses. By the time I was 25, I was running my own crew. We could frame a 2-story house in 4 days if the weather cooperated. I knew exactly how many studs I needed for a wall just by looking at the blueprint. I knew how to read the grain of a 2x4 so it would not warp. I knew how to nail a joist hanger so it would hold 1,000 pounds. Not every job went smooth. I remember a church we built out on County Road 12. The architect had designed a vaulted ceiling that did not have proper load-bearing support. We framed it the way the blueprint said, and the roof sagged 2 inches within a week. The general contractor wanted to blame us. He stood on the site and pointed at my framing and said we had done it wrong. I pulled out the blueprints and showed him exactly what the architect had drawn. We built what they designed, I said. The design is wrong. He did not want to hear it. He wanted someone to pay for the delay. I spent 3 days on the phone with the architect and the engineer. I drew up a new framing plan myself on a napkin at first, then on proper paper. I showed them how to fix the load path without tearing down the whole roof. The engineer looked at my plan. He asked me where I had gone to school. I did not go to school, I said. I build things for a living. He approved the change. We fixed the roof. The church is still standing. I built a house once for a young couple. First-time buyers. They had saved for years. The wife was a teacher. The husband worked at a tire shop. They came to the site every weekend to watch the progress. I showed them the framing. I showed them where the load-bearing walls were. I showed them how the roof trusses tied together. The husband asked me questions. Good ones. How much weight can this wall hold? How long will this roof last? Will the floors squeak? I answered every question honestly. When we finished, the wife hugged me. She actually hugged me. Thank you, she said. This is our dream. I thought about that house a lot after everything with my parents fell apart. I thought about how those people trusted me, how they saved for years and put their faith in a bunch of framers they had never met. I did not let them down. That is the difference between what I do and what my family does. A house does not lie. A foundation does not play favorites. A roof does not choose one child over another. It just does its job. I like that. The hand that feeds is not always the hand that is thanked. Sometimes it is the hand that is bitten. But that does not mean you stop building. It means you learn to be more careful about who you build for. That is the thing about construction. You cannot fake it. You cannot talk your way through it. The wall is either plumb or it is not. The roof is either square or it is not. There is no in between. I like that. I remember the first house I framed on my own. A 3-bedroom on the outskirts of town. The foreman handed me the blueprints and told me to run the crew for the week. I stayed up half the night studying those blueprints. I traced every wall, every window, every door. I calculated my lumber 3 times. We framed that house in 3 days. The walls were plumb. The corners were square. The roof pitch was dead on. The foreman walked through the whole house, checking my work. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Not bad." Coming from him, that was a medal. I built a lot of houses after that. Strip malls, a church, an addition to the high school. But that first one stayed with me. I still drive by it sometimes. It needs paint. The porch has a crack. But the walls are still straight. I made sure of that. My father's back gave out when he was 59. 3 herniated discs, the doctor said. He could not lift more than 20 pounds without collapsing in pain. The mill let him go after 35 years. No pension, no severance, just a pat on the back and a promise that his health insurance would last 6 months. He filed for disability. The system moved slow. Too slow. I remember the day it happened. My mother called me, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Your father collapsed at work. I drove to the hospital. The doctor showed us the x-rays. 3 bulging discs, bone spurs pressing on nerves. Decades of lifting had finally caught up with him. My father stared at the x-ray like he was looking at a stranger's body. The mill gave him a retirement party in the break room. Sheet cake and coffee. His supervisor gave a speech about how Bill Hayes had never missed a day. My father shook hands with men half his age and smiled like it did not kill him to stand up straight. I drove him home. He did not say a word the whole ride. He just stared out the window. I did not know how bad things had gotten after that. My father was a proud man. He would never have asked for help. I found out by accident. I stopped by their house on a Sunday afternoon in March. The grass was overgrown. The paint was peeling. The mailbox was hanging by one screw. Newspapers were piled by the front door. My mother opened the door. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. Will, I did not know you were coming. Is everything okay? Fine. Everything is fine. She was a bad liar. I walked inside. The house was dark. The refrigerator was making a wheezing hum. The kitchen counters were bare. No dishes. No fruit. No signs of life. My father was in his recliner, staring at nothing. He had a blanket over his legs even though it was 70 degrees. He looked smaller than I remembered. Hey, Dad. Hey, son. Then the mail came. My mother picked it off the floor. I saw her face change when she got to an official-looking envelope with a window. What is that? Nothing. Just bills. Let me see it. It was an eviction notice. 3 months behind on rent. 3 months. My father looked at the floor. My mother started crying. How long has this been going on? A while, my father said. I did not want to worry you. You are about to be evicted, and you did not want to worry me? We thought we could figure it out. They could not figure it out. They had no income. My father's disability claim was tangled in paperwork. My mother had applied everywhere. Nobody was hiring a 56-year-old woman with no experience. I asked how much they needed. $3,000. That was it. $3,000 to keep a roof over their heads for 3 months. I wrote a check on the spot. I told them I would cover the next month too. My mother hugged me. She told me I was a good son. This is just temporary, I said, until you get back on your feet. Of course. Temporary. That was the deal. The next week, I stopped by with groceries. $200 worth of food. I filled their pantry, their refrigerator, their freezer. My mother thanked me. My father shook my hand. The week after that, I paid the electric bill. Then the water bill. Then the gas bill. One by one, I took over the payments piling up on the counter. I did not mind at first. They were my parents. They had raised me. I owed them. The problem started when my younger brother showed up. Derek was 32. He lived 3 towns over in an apartment he could barely afford. He sold cars for a living, or he had before the dealership let him go. Derek's life was a series of jobs he lost and opportunities he missed. The boss did not like him. The economy was bad. Someone else got the promotion. He showed up at my parents' house the same week I started paying their bills. Funny how that worked. Heard you are helping out, he said. He was standing in the kitchen, eating a sandwich I had paid for. Someone has to. I would help if I could. Things are tight right now. He never offered anything. He never did. But my mother looked at him differently than she looked at me. When Derek walked into the room, her face changed. She smiled like she had not smiled in weeks. She touched his arm. She laughed at his jokes. I noticed it. I just did not say anything. The first sign of trouble came a week later. I stopped by after work to drop off a check for next month's rent. I walked in through the back door the way I always did. My mother was on the phone in the kitchen. She did not know I was there. Derek thinks Will is getting too involved, she was saying. He says Will is going to expect something in return. I stopped. I do not know. Maybe Derek is right. Will has always been controlling. I stood in the doorway. Then I walked in. She saw me. Her face went red. Will, I did not hear you come in. Obviously. That was not what it sounded like. It sounded exactly like what it sounded like. I put the check on the counter and left. I should have confronted her. But I did not. I was afraid of the answer. The next Sunday, my mother called and asked me to come over for dinner. She said she wanted to make things right. I said yes because I wanted to believe that everything was fine. Derek was there when I arrived. Of course he was. He was sitting at the table with my parents, a plate of food in front of him. My mother had made pot roast, my favorite. That should have been a good sign. Nobody talked much. The only sounds were forks scraping against plates and the hum of the refrigerator. After dinner, my mother cleared her throat. Will, we need to talk about something. Okay. Derek thinks we should be more careful about accepting help from you. He thinks it creates an unhealthy dynamic. I looked at Derek. He looked at his plate. Unhealthy dynamic, I repeated. He just means we do not want to feel like we owe you anything. You do not owe me anything. You are my parents. I am trying to keep a roof over your head. But Derek says, I do not care what Derek says. I am paying your rent. I am paying your electric bill. I am paying your water bill. I am the reason you still have a home. And you are sitting here listening to a man who has never paid a single bill in his entire life. Derek looked up. You do not have to throw it in our faces. I am not throwing it in anyone's face. I am stating a fact. Facts do not need to be stated, my mother said. You are making us feel bad for accepting your help. That is not fair. I stared at her. I am making you feel bad? I am the one writing the checks. I am the one working double shifts. I am the one who has not bought himself a new pair of boots in 2 years because I am too busy paying everyone else's bills. Nobody asked you to do that, Derek said. For words. They hit me harder than anything else I had heard that night. Nobody asked you to do that. I looked at my mother. She did not correct him. She did not defend me. She sat there, silent, letting her golden child tell me my help was not wanted. Is that how you feel? I asked her. We appreciate your help, Will. We do. But Derek is right. We need to handle this on our own. You cannot handle it on your own. You are 3 months behind on everything. You have no income. You are going to lose this house. Then we will lose it. At least we will have our dignity. I stood up. Fine. Handle it on your own. I walked out. I did not look back. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes before I could drive. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to understand what had just happened. I had helped them. I had given them money, food, time. And they had chosen Derek over me. The man who gave them nothing over the man who gave them everything. I drove home and did not sleep. I did not call them. I waited for them to come to their senses. A week later, my mother called. She was crying. The landlord had filed for eviction. She needed money. You said you wanted to handle it on your own. Please, Will. I am begging you. I begged you too. I begged you to see that I was trying to help. And you chose Derek over me. You sat at that table and you let him tell me my help was not wanted. And you did not say a single word in my defense. That is not true. I heard you on the phone. You said I was controlling. You said I was going to expect something in return. You have known me for 36 years, and you still believe that about me. I was confused. I was scared. I was scared too, but I was still there. I was still writing checks. I was still showing up. Every single time. Please, just this one more time. I hung up. I did not send the money. The mill closed 3 years after my father retired. The company moved production overseas where labor was cheaper. 150 men lost their jobs. The building sat empty for a year. Then they sold the equipment for scrap. I drove past it a few months after it closed. The parking lot was empty. The sign was gone. The windows were dark. I thought about my father. I thought about how he had given 35 years to that place. How he had never missed a day. How he had gone to work in snow and ice and 100-degree heat. And in the end, the mill did not care. It just closed. That is the thing about giving your life to something. It does not always give back. I sat in my living room that night and thought about my father. The man who had taught me everything. The man who had worked 35 years and never complained. The man who had given his whole life to a family that was tearing itself apart. I thought about what he would think of me. I do not know. I never got the chance to ask him. They lost the house 2 weeks later. The sheriff came and put their belongings on the curb. I heard about it from a neighbor. I did not go. I could not watch them carry their life out to the street. My parents moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. A one-bedroom with thin walls and a radiator that banged all night. Derek did not take them in. He did not have room, he said. He did not have the money. Funny how that worked. The man who had all the opinions about my help did not have any help to offer himself. I did not talk to my mother for 3 years after that. The first Thanksgiving after the dinner, I sat alone in my house. I made a turkey sandwich and watched football. I told myself I did not care. The first Christmas I worked. I volunteered for a job site that needed holiday security. I sat in a trailer and drank coffee and watched the sun come up. My mother called on Christmas Eve. I let it go to voicemail. Will, it is your mother. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. We miss you. I hope you are okay. Call me if you get this. I love you. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. The second year was easier. I knew what to expect. I knew I would spend the holidays alone. I planned for it. I bought a 12-pack and a frozen pizza and I treated it like any other day. My mother called on Christmas Eve again. Will, it is your mother. Merry Christmas. Your father is not doing well. The doctor says his heart is weak. I do not know what to do. I wish you were here. I love you. I listened to it 3 times. I almost called back. I did not. The second year, the messages on my birthday were different. Shorter. Tired. I know you do not want to talk to me. I understand. I just want you to know I am thinking about you. I love you. That was it. The third year, she called on my birthday. I let it go to voicemail like always. Happy birthday, Will. I love you. I listened to it once. I deleted it. I do not know what I would have said if I had answered. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I will never know. She called me on my birthday every year. I let it go to voicemail. The first year, her messages were long. She talked about the apartment. She told me she missed me. She told me she was sorry. But she never said what she was sorry for. Not specifically. Not in a way that showed she understood. The second year, the messages got shorter. She sounded tired. She said my father was not doing well. His heart was weak. She said Derek had moved away. The third year, the messages were barely a sentence. Happy birthday, Will. I love you. That was it. I listened to every message. And I deleted every one. That might sound cruel. It is not. It is survival. Every time I heard her voice, I felt the wound open again. I was not ready to forgive. I was not sure I ever would be. I threw myself into my work. I took every job I could get. I worked Saturdays and Sundays. I worked until my hands were raw and my back ached and I was too tired to think. It helped. The work helped. In the months after the dinner, I kept working. That was what I did. I showed up at 6, I built houses, I went home. I did not talk about what happened. I did not think about it if I could help it. But it crept in. At night, mostly. When I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had done the right thing. I thought about calling my mother. I thought about driving to their apartment and knocking on the door. I thought about pretending the dinner never happened. I remember one Christmas during those years. I was alone. I had bought a small tree, a 4-foot thing from the lot behind the grocery store. I put it in my living room and hung a few lights on it. I sat on my couch and stared at that tree for an hour. I thought about all the Christmases when I was a kid. My father would come home from the mill and my mother would have dinner ready. We would sit at the table and eat and pretend everything was fine. Derek would get better gifts than me. Every year. I learned to expect it. But there was one Christmas, I think I was 8, where my father gave me a set of tools. A real hammer, a real tape measure, a real level. They were too big for my hands. But he showed me how to use them anyway. You are never too young to learn how to build, he said. I kept those tools for years. I still have the level somewhere in my garage. I thought about that on Christmas Eve, sitting alone in my house. I thought about my father. I thought about whether he was thinking about me too. I never found out. But I could not. Because if I did, I would have to pretend that what she said did not matter. And it mattered. It still matters. I took more jobs. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. I told myself I was saving money. But really, I was trying to stay busy enough that I did not have to think. It almost worked. There was a woman I dated for a few months during that time. Her name was Rachel. She worked at a diner. We went out a few times. She asked about my family. I told her I did not have one. She stopped calling after that. I did not blame her. What kind of man says he does not have a family? But it was easier than explaining. About 6 months after the dinner, Derek called me. Will. Hey. What do you want, Derek? I need a favor. I lost my job again. I need $500. I laughed. You told Mom and Dad not to accept my help. You said I was controlling. You said I was going to expect something in return. That was different. That was them. How is it different? He did not have an answer. I cannot help you, Derek. Come on, man. You are my brother. And you are the one who said nobody asked me to help. So I am not helping. You can handle it on your own. I hung up. He called me 3 more times over the next year. Each time, the same story. He needed money. He had lost another job. Each time, I said no. The last time, he asked for $200. You made your choices, Derek. Now you get to live with them. He did not call again. I heard about Derek a few years later from a guy who knew him. He had gotten a woman pregnant and left town. He was in Oklahoma working odd jobs, drinking too much. The woman raised the kid alone. I did not feel sorry for him. I felt sorry for the kid. Derek was the golden child, and look where it got him. He never had to earn anything, so he never learned how. He went through life expecting things to be handed to him, and when they were not, he blamed everyone else. My mother made him that way. She loved him so much that she ruined him. I do not know where he is now. Somewhere in Oklahoma. Working at a car lot, maybe, or not working at all. He was always good at avoiding hard lessons. Derek was the golden child because he never challenged my mother. He never made her feel bad. I remember one time Derek got a job at a car dealership. He came home and told my mother he was the top salesman in his first month. She bragged about it to everyone. She told the neighbors. She told the ladies at church. She told the cashier at the grocery store. 6 months later, he got fired. He told my mother it was because the economy was bad. She believed him. I found out later from someone who knew the owner that Derek had been padding his sales numbers. He was writing fake deals to meet his quota. When the dealership found out, they let him go. My mother never knew. Or if she did, she never admitted it. That was Derek's gift. He could make anyone believe anything. Except me. I knew him too well. I remember another time, Derek started a business. A mobile detailing company. He washed cars at people's houses. He borrowed money from my mother to buy equipment. Pressure washer. A buffer. A van. He did 3 jobs. Then he stopped showing up. My mother said he was having trouble with the business model. I said he was lazy. She did not talk to me for a month after that. But I was right. He never paid her back. She never asked him to. Derek was the golden child because he never challenged my mother. He never made her feel bad. He never pointed out that she was wrong. He just smiled and nodded and let her take care of him. And she loved him for it. I could not do that. I could not pretend. That is the real difference between us. Not that he was loved more, but that he was willing to be what she wanted and I was not. I think about that sometimes. I think about whether I could have done things differently. If I had smiled more and argued less. If I had called more and visited more. If I had been more like Derek. But I was not built that way. My father built me to be honest. To say what I mean and mean what I say. To show up and do the work and not complain. That is who I am. I cannot be someone else just to make my mother happy. I met a woman named Maria about a year after the dinner. She worked at the pharmacy on Main Street. We dated. We got married at the courthouse. No big ceremony. No reception. Just a judge and a signature. My father came. My mother came. Derek did not. Maria does not ask me to talk about my family. She knows enough. My father passed away 2 years ago. A heart attack. I got the call from my mother at 6 in the morning. I knew something was wrong because she never called that early. Will, your father. He is gone. I drove to their apartment. The paramedics were already there. They had him on a stretcher, a sheet over his face. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. I sat down across from her. I did not know what to say. He went in his sleep, she said. I woke up and he was cold. I nodded. The doctor said it was his heart. He had been having chest pains. He did not tell me. That sounded like him. He would not have told her. He would not have wanted her to worry. I sat with her for an hour. Then I went to make the calls. I called the funeral home. I called my father's sister in Oklahoma. I called Old Man Ellis. I did not call Derek. I figured my mother would handle that. She did. He did not come to the funeral. I drove to the funeral home that afternoon to pick out a casket. The funeral director showed me the options. Mahogany. Pine. I picked pine. It was what my father would have wanted. He never believed in wasting money on things that did not matter. I went to the funeral. I stood in the back of the church. My mother was in the front row, crying into a handkerchief. I looked at the casket and thought about the last thing I said to him. It was at the dinner 3 years earlier. I had said, fine, handle it on your own. And then I had walked out. I never went back. After the service, my mother approached me. Will, thank you for coming. I did not say anything. I made mistakes, she said. I chose Derek over you, and I was wrong. I looked at her. Then I walked away. She died 6 months later. Complications from diabetes. I got the call from a nurse at the hospital. She said my mother had been found unresponsive in her apartment. A neighbor had noticed the mail piling up and called the landlord. The landlord broke down the door. They found her on the bathroom floor. She had been there for 2 days. I drove to the hospital. I identified her body. She looked smaller than I remembered. She looked like she had finally stopped running. I thought about the last time I saw her. At my father's funeral. She had apologized. She had said she made mistakes. I had said thank you for saying that, and walked away. I never found out if she had money for the funeral. I paid for it. I did it because someone had to, not because I wanted to. Derek did not offer to help. I did not ask him. A week after the funeral, I went to her apartment to clear it out. The landlord needed it empty by the end of the month. I had not been inside since my father died. It was smaller than I remembered. A couch, a television, a kitchen table with 2 chairs. A photograph of my father on the wall. A photograph of Derek on the nightstand. None of me. I boxed up her clothes for donation. I threw away the old food in the refrigerator. I found a shoebox full of birthday cards she had never sent. They were addressed to me, every one of them going back 4 years. She had written them but never mailed them. I did not open them. I put the shoebox in the trash. I kept the photograph of my father. I hung it in my workshop where I could see it while I was working. The landlord asked me if I wanted her other things. I said no. There was a box of my father's old things too. His work gloves. His hard hat. The steel-toed boots he wore for 35 years. The soles were worn smooth. The leather was cracked. But they still had his shape in them. I kept the boots. I put them on a shelf in my garage. I do not know why. Maybe to remind myself what a real man looks like. Sometimes I pick them up. They are heavy. The leather is stiff. The soles are worn smooth on the outside edge, the way a man's feet wear when he stands at a machine for 35 years. I think about the miles my father walked in those boots. I think about the mornings he laced them up in the dark. I think about the afternoons he came home and pulled them off one at a time and set them by the door. He never complained. Not once. I put them back on the shelf. I go back to work. I went to her funeral. I stood in the same church in the same back row, and I watched them lower her into the ground next to my father. I did not cry. I had done all my crying years ago, alone in my truck, on the nights when I wondered if anyone in the world actually loved me. After the service, a woman approached me. I did not recognize her at first. Then I realized she was one of my mother's friends from church. "Your mother talked about you all the time," she said. I did not believe her. She said you were the one who helped when things got hard. She said you were the one who showed up. She had a strange way of showing it, I said. The woman nodded. She did not argue. I walked away. I thought about the check I had written that first day. $3,000. The groceries. The bills. The 4 weeks I had spent trying to keep them afloat. For weeks. That was all it took. For weeks of help, and they were ready to cut me off. I still think about it sometimes. I think about what I would do differently. I would still help them. That is not the part one would change. But I would pay attention to the signs. I would listen when someone shows you who they are. My mother showed me who she was. She showed me that she valued Derek's comfort over my sacrifice. She showed me that my help was only welcome as long as it did not make her feel guilty. That was the hardest lesson. Not the betrayal. Not the lost money. But the realization that I had spent my whole life trying to earn a love that was never going to be mine. My father loved me. I know that. He showed it through work and sacrifice and quiet presence. But my mother? I do not know if she ever loved me the way I needed her to. I think she tried. I think she did her best. But her best was not enough. And that is not my fault. I have a family of my own now. A wife and a daughter. We live on Peach Street, a few blocks from where I grew up. It is not a big house. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, cabinets that do not close all the way. But it is ours. My daughter is 7 years old. She has my father's eyes. I tell her I love her every day. I want it to be the most certain thing in her life. I also want her to understand that love is not a transaction. You do not give to get. The people who truly love you will be there even when you have nothing left to give. And the people who do not, they will leave. That is the lesson. Ellisville changed after the mill closed. A lot of people left. The ones who stayed, stayed because they had nowhere else to go. Main Street used to have a hardware store, a diner, a barber shop, a pharmacy. Now the hardware store is a pawn shop. The diner closed. The barber shop is a church on Sundays and empty the rest of the week. I drive down Main Street sometimes and I think about my father. I think about how he walked these streets for 35 years. How he knew every face. How he waved at every car. The town did not wave back. It just moved on. I think about that when I see the young guys on my crew. They do not remember the mill. They do not remember what this town was like before everything fell apart. I try to teach them, not about the mill, about what it means to show up, about what it means to build something that lasts. Most of them do not get it. They think I am old and set in my ways. Maybe I am, but I am still here, still showing up, still building. That counts for something. I still work construction. I am 43 now. My knees pop when I stand up. My back aches when it rains. I have a scar on my left hand from a saw kickback that I will carry for the rest of my life. But I still show up every morning at 6. Last year, old man Ellis retired and sold the company to his son. The son offered me a promotion to site supervisor. I took it. I wear a hard hat now instead of a tool belt. I spend more time reading blueprints than swinging a hammer. But I still walk the site every day. I still check the framing. I still make sure the walls are square and the joists are level. I have been doing this long enough to know that buildings settle. They shift. They move. If you cut corners on the front end, you pay for it on the back end. Every time. I have seen houses where the framer used green lumber and the walls twisted 6 months later. I have seen roofs where the trusses were spaced too wide and the whole thing sagged in the first winter. I have seen foundations that were poured wrong and cracked before the drywall went up. The owners never knew who framed their house. They never saw the mistakes. They just lived with the consequences. That is why I check everything twice. Because nobody else will. I fired a guy once for cutting corners. He was a framer, been in the business for 10 years. He knew better. But he was in a hurry, and he thought nobody would notice. He had nailed the studs at 24 inches on center instead of 16. Saved him maybe an hour, but the wall would not have passed inspection. And even if it did, it would have sagged within a year. I caught it on a walkthrough. I made him tear it out and do it again. He cursed me out, told me I was too particular, told me nobody would know the difference. I would know, I said. And now you will too. He finished the job. Then I let him go. I do not need men on my crew who cut corners. There are too many people depending on me. I have been on job sites where the temperature hit 110. I have been on sites where it rained for 3 weeks straight and the mud swallowed your boots. I have been on sites where the architect changed the plans every other day and the general contractor blamed us for the delays. You learn to adapt. You learn to solve problems. You learn that complaining does not get the wall built. There is a satisfaction in that, in taking a pile of lumber and turning it into something real, something that will outlast you. I think that is why my father liked the mill. He was part of something bigger. The houses that people lived in, the churches they prayed in, the schools their kids went to. They all started with lumber that passed through his machine. He never said that. He would have thought it was sentimental nonsense. But I know it is true. I have a rule on my crew. If you would not sleep in it, do not build it. I tell every new guy that on his first day. Pretend your mother is going to live here. Pretend your daughter is going to play in this room. Would you feel good about the work you did? Most of them get it. The ones who do not last. Some of the younger guys think I am too particular. They say I check things twice that only need to be checked once. I tell them what my father told me. Everything you own needs to be taken care of, including your reputation. They do not always understand. They will learn, or they will not. That is not my problem. There is a kid on my crew named Marcus, 19 years old. Never held a hammer before he started. His first week, he nailed his thumb to a stud. Most guys would have quit. He showed up the next Monday. He is not the fastest. He is not the strongest. But he shows up. Last month, I saw him checking his own work. He had framed a corner and he was standing back, looking at it, making sure it was square. He did not know I was watching. I walked over. The corner was perfect. Good work, I said. He nodded and went back to work. That is the kind of man I want on my crew. The kind who checks his own work. The kind who shows up. I see a lot of myself in him. My name is Will Hayes. I am a construction worker. I helped my parents when they had nothing, and they cut me off within a month. I do not regret helping them. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. But I learned the lesson, and I will never forget it. The hand that feeds is not always the hand that is thanked. Sometimes it is the hand that is bitten, and then discarded. That is the lesson. I do not call. I do not write. I do not wonder what might have been. My mother made her choice. She chose Derek. She chose to let her house fall apart. She chose to die alone in an apartment with a pile of unsent cards. That was her choice, not mine. I made my choice the night I walked out of that dinner. I chose myself. My daughter will grow up knowing that her father was a man who kept his word. She will know that I love her. She will know that I will always be there. But she will also know that love has limits. That you can give and give and give, and some people will still bite the hand that feeds them. And when they do, you cut them off. You do not look back. You keep building. That is what my father taught me. Not forgiveness. Not patience. But work. Show up. Do the job. Build something that lasts. The rest is noise. My name is Will Hayes. I am a construction worker. I helped my parents when they had nothing, and they cut me off within a month. I do not regret helping them. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. But I see it now, and I will never forget it.